Welcome back to ChiroShift, the podcast that will change your perspective of the chiropractic profession. I'm Dr. David Newton, and today I'm joined by co-host Dr. Taylor Goldberg and special guests Dr. Luu and Jenna Nitowski-Luu. Phil and Jenna are chiropractors, coaches, and athletes, as well as owners of Lotus Spine and Strength, where they focus on helping their clients reduce pain while also improving their physical performance. They're based out of Wayne, Pennsylvania, and see clients virtually worldwide. They often find themselves working with individuals who've been told there's nothing that we can do for your pain. And if that's something that you've heard before, then this episode is for you. So welcome to the show, Phil and Jenna.
Thank you so much for having us and for that awesome introduction. We are super excited to be on ChiroShift.
That second round was even better. Damn, man. It's good intro.
It's a work in progress,
Damn.
but we're here now. We're happy to have you guys, and I do want to jump right into things today. And we already mentioned for the individuals that are out there who have seen various providers, have been told there's nothing we can do for your pain, and are really at a place where they're just looking for answers. What is it about you guys that allows you to work with that type of person and have success where others may have failed?
Yeah, I think telling a little bit of my story and my background will help to explain this. So I am a runner, and I have been since I was about 10 years old. When I was around 14, 15, I started to experience what would become chronic foot pain. And throughout that process, I had seen every type of provider that you could possibly think of and received pretty much every treatment that you would think of in terms of conservative care for that pain. The issue was that every time, I would feel a reduction in pain and go back to running, I would experience a flare up again. It was every single time that I thought I had gotten over the hump and I had really understood, what was going on and that it was put behind me, that I would go back to practice and have another flare up. And so one of the things that we make sure that we do with treatment is we don't only focus on reducing the pain while you're at rest, right? We focus on reducing the pain while also exposing you to whatever activity it is that pain is holding you back from. So it's a little bit of, unfortunately, a different approach than most take, but I think it's becoming more and more the norm, thankfully, that people are helping, or providers are helping their patients to actually get back to the thing that it is that they want to be doing and provide guidance in that super, super vital period where they are going back to whatever that thing is.
Sure. I love that. So speaking of when you're running and you have these flares, and also I think we should define what is conservative care. What does that mean? And why is that usually the approach to something like foot pain in your experience or musculoskeletal pain in general? And how as chiropractors can we help with that?
I'll take this one. So conservative care is definitely the way that we should be doing things for just the gold standard for chiropractors and physical therapists too. A lot of people know chiropractors can just maybe only do adjustments or just work on the spine. But as we all know, adjustments, hands-on treatment, they can be helpful in the short term, but we know in the long term that might not be the case. Conservative care to address musculoskeletal things, it can be manual work, it can be adjusting the spine, it can be exercises and stuff like that to help the patient do things on your own for self-release, etc. But the main thing that we want to emphasize is teaching the patient how to take care of themselves. So it's that self-management aspect that a lot of it is missing in modern healthcare. It's that educational component. It's knowing what the patient currently knows about their condition is huge. So making sure that the history that we take, the question that we ask, we have to know what they know first before we can even start the treatment so that we can find the best start point for them. And then it really is about prescribing the right, whether it's exercises or activities that resemble something close to what they're trying to do to help them feel like they're on their way to doing the thing that they're trying to do. That would be conservative. And it's more than just, all right, let's just crack the back and go from there.
And you talked about a lot of things there that I think maybe not everyone is aware of as far as, what can be involved in a more detailed plan of care. And as you mentioned, maybe not even specific to chiropractic, but across the board, we're beginning to address some of these issues. And I know for both of you, you describe yourselves not just as chiropractors, but also as coaches. which I think is something that's so incredibly important in this process. For people that are maybe just a little bit more curious about what that means, what does it really look like to not only have a provider like a chiropractor in your corner, but also someone who is a coach and is going to be there to support you and guide you through a process? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, so we like to describe ourselves as coaches because when you think of a coach, you think of someone who is kind of on the ground with you. You don't think of someone who is very far away. You don't think of someone who's out of access or not easily accessible to you. And so when you have a coach, what they work with you on is, like I said, kind of the nitty gritty. And when we're trying to overcome pain and we're trying to work through all the barriers that come with that, we need someone who's going to kind of be a cheerleader for us. We need someone who's going to be in our corner and be very accessible. So we take that coaching role very seriously because it isn't just do X, Y, and Z, and I'll see you next appointment. It's helping to guide you through the in-betweens where in the traditional model, you might kind of feel a little bit lost or a little bit like, you don't have everything that you need. Whereas we like to call ourselves like sometimes like a chiropractor in your pocket, where if you have a question, you just send it over and we get back to you. If you have, something comes up that you need to change your plan for that week, whether it's a flare up that we didn't expect, whether it's, you have to travel, we're right there so that we can help to navigate it and kind of rearrange whatever we need to rearrange and help you get over all of those random barriers that come when you are trying to do rehab, do your exercise prescription, and overcome pain in general.
It's like the small things where it's like, you ever hear the term like one complaint per visit only? And it becomes really tough because like when you're the patient and you have maybe 2 to 3 minutes to talk to your doctor and you're like, damn, I forgot to ask him that. It's those in between sessions that become really important because when you're in the trend, or if you're the athlete or the patient and you're trying to do things on your own, you're like, ah, man, I wish I kind of had him to like see what's going on here or see her to have her, have access to her a bit more easily so that I can really understand what I'm trying to do here. So with that coaching aspect, we try to, like Jenna was saying, like making sure there's that continuity of care. We do have sessions, which is more of that classic traditional model, but we do incorporate that tech support, email support, whenever you need us for those small little questions that make a big difference, especially if there's like a flare up, maybe outside of the session that you might need to kind of refer back to your doc to be like, hey, how can I figure this out? So it's that continuity of care that we're really stressing that really make a whole world of a difference from good to great healthcare.
And I know we have talked, previously about some instances where you guys have had, very specific clients who have had issues in between your scheduled appointment times where you are meeting with them. And more specifically, Phil, I know you had talked about a client who had been, I believe, deadlifting and they had a flare up during that session. They were able to get a hold of you in the moment. You were able to coach them through that session and allow them to continue working. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about, what a real life example of this would be given that case study?
Yeah. So I've been with him for a little bit. We first started working with some hip pain, hip discomfort, and we got over that. And then now we were kind of going in that performance spectrum, trying to get him stronger for his next powerlifting meet. We did everything to the book. Everything was kind of perfectly in terms of like, it wasn't too much in terms of the stress and the weight, but something happened. I happened to be available in the office that time, and he sent me a text, and we hopped on a quick call and a video chat. Like he was at his gym, and like, all right, set the phone down, walk me through what you're doing for these deadlifts. And he was this close. I'm like, all right, I'm going to call it quits and just like leave. And usually that would happen when he would have a flare up, just like, I'm done for the day. But I said, dude, if you leave right now, you're surrendering. You're waving the flag. We have to find a way to get something for you to do so you can break that expectation. You just going with what your pain is saying. Yes, sometimes you need to stop if you are severely in pain, but this is the value where the doc or us clinicians can really help differentiate for a patient if the pain is something to be very concerned about, or maybe it's a sensitivity. Maybe it's just like a little bit thing your body's trying to tell you something. But there's always, usually for 90% of the time, there's always something you can do. So we ended up modifying the movement. We backed down the weight a little bit. Even that was a little tough. We got him to do some certain movements and stretches to kind of calm that area down. But honestly, at the end of the day, like by the end of it, he had a really great session. He was able to get everything else in. His pain actually felt better by the end of it. And we were able to do something that made him feel like, this didn't really derail too much of my training. I got something really good in, and he felt fine the next day. So he was really just kind of like surprised about that, but at the same time, like having that continuity of care, those small but so valuable moments of in the trenches with your patient makes a huge difference for outcomes.
I love that. And I think that's what quote unquote holistic care is and should look like. And I love when you talked about having more than one complaint per visit. I know I hear a lot of my clients, they'll go to physical therapy or chiropractor and they're only allowed to work on one area of their body. The human body doesn't always work in that way. And it likes to, the whole thing's, it's all connected. It's all connected. So we need to not just look at our knee if our knee is the only thing in pain. And in this specific situation with the deadlift client, getting them to move again and potentially meet physical activity guidelines can overall make them healthier, which as chiropractors is our number one goal, is to promote health. How do you think as chiropractors, where is our role in prescribing exercise and utilizing exercise as a treatment modality? I know I hear a lot of the time as a chiropractor, what gives you the ability to do that?
Yeah. So when you look at what is, in our scope as chiropractors, we are really lucky to have a kind of wide range of education and tools available to us to help you reduce pain. And so when I think of chiropractic and the way that I describe it is we are there to help you with pain reduction and to build a bigger capacity, better performance, better health via conservative care for any musculoskeletal complaint. And so like I think we mentioned before, that can be adjusting, that can be manual therapy, that can be stretching, that can be talking about your diet, your sleep, your exercise routines, and that can be giving you specific exercises to do as well. So I think we are, of course, traditionally known to just be working on adjusting. But luckily, we have plenty more tools available to us, and more and more and more chiropractors are utilizing those tools, like you said before, to promote overall health and obviously reduce pain as well.
And traditionally, I think the chiropractic narrative tends to fall in line with that the spine is the center that needs to be quote unquote corrected or aligned in order for health to occur. And this is a narrative that has been perpetuated for a very long time. And I think when we look at the entire body of evidence that is available to us today that really demonstrates what it means to be healthy, I think we know, or at least to the greatest possibility that you can know anything, that it is more complicated than let's just feel your spine a little bit and then make it pop. Like it's just more than that. Okay. And I'm sure this makes sense to a lot of you, despite maybe what you've heard. So as Jenna and Phil begin to talk about some of these other details and, really give a more overarching approach to what care can look like, this is something that we want you to be able to consider, because as you begin to talk about pain and you maybe begin to talk about some of the things that you've been feeling or can't get over, we just need to understand that it's not as simple as a black and white type scenario. Your spine is in place, it's out of place, or you've been in pain for 6 months or a year plus, and it's just this single thing that we need to correct to get you into this right place. Pain is complex. A lot of the times there are many different things that can be affecting why you are or not feeling something. So when we start to talk about these overarching approaches, I think the importance in that is really that we can begin to check multiple boxes off the list that could be potentially contributing factors to that. So when we start to talk to patients about pain, and I'm sure you guys have had these conversations a lot, how do you tend to go about explaining pain to your patients, especially in instances where you feel that, there probably are a host of factors that are contributing to that particular person's symptoms or pain? How do you begin to have that conversation?
I usually have this, you guys have probably had this example in practice already so many times. Patient comes in the office, doc, I have degenerative disc disease. I have a bulging disc. I have this spinal stenosis, and that's why I have back pain. And, at some point, the doctor's going to say, you're going to have surgery. And of course, what we know to say is, great. Like, we understand that that's going on. That's what that's what your report is saying. But then we drop them with there's a lot of cases where you could have this and not have pain. And then you can have the opposite where you can have pain and have a perfect looking spine. So you'll have that, a lot of patients will be like, oh, man, this is really damn confusing. So what the heck's going on? Like, so how do I make sense of my pain? So of course, to the listeners, like, we want answers and we want like this equals that to make it more easy to understand than digest. What we should be doing and what we're really good at as providers here is making sure like you take the most important information of what we have, filtering what's least important, what's more important, and getting down to like, okay, now that you know this is the case, like what are you trying to do at the end of the day? So because of your, you have this degeneration, this bulging disc, at the end of the day, are you trying to do X, Y, and Z? And if you start there, reverse engineering back is really the road that you should be taking, regardless of, and of course, we do an exam to make sure you're safe. There's nothing seriously wrong, whether that's, cancer, fracture, infection. We rule out the big red flags. But once all that is clear, man, we're good to go. Like, we want to make sure we get you to doing what you're trying to do. And we're not saying we should ignore what you have, the reports, what they're saying, but a lot of it, like, Dr. Newton's saying, it's very multifactorial, and it's about understanding what you can still do. Because pain is so complicated, it also means that there are so many ways that you can manage it. We haven't talked about some of these cases where we're missing talking about sleep, stress management, how your nutrition is going, how much water you're having, like the small little things that could play a huge difference in your pain experience.
Yeah. And if this sounds confusing, because I think a lot of patients and a lot of people are ingrained in them to find a diagnosis, find what's wrong, get somebody to fix it. That's what society has kind of fed us for a very, very long time. But the evidence that we have now shows us that that's just not how the human body works. And so if you have fallen down that road and it hasn't worked for you, maybe it's time to try something new. Maybe it is time to not have a definitive answer, not have a definitive label to guide you through a process, but instead use your own experience and your own pain story and your own symptoms to guide you on what is next. And if you need help with that, that's what a chiropractor, that's what we should really be there for. It's funny, we brought this up to our mentorship last Sunday. There was a picture of a cervical spine, and it had all the disc herniations, the spinal stenosis, all the things that you would think equal pain. And it was a 78-year-old, I think. I don't remember the exact age, but no pain, zero symptoms, nothing at all. And so imaging is always only one part of our story. It is never the entire picture, and it should only ever be looked at as one part of our story. And if your chiropractor isn't taking that realm and is really overemphasizing the importance of imaging and maybe not even treating you without it, might be a good sign to find somebody else. And so on that note, as far as like pathologizing pain goes and creating a diagnosis, when is that important? I know, Jenna, me and you have kind of talked about, I can never pronounce the word, the iatrogenic diagnoses. I would love to hear a little bit on that. And if you can pronounce it right, let me know.
Iatrogenesis is the process of your doctor providing care to you or a diagnosis or label that makes you feel worse without any other reason, which is really, really crazy when you think about it. And so we do know that there are some labels that can be placed on us that may make us feel worse for literally no reason. This isn't a typical one. Actually, it is kind of a typical one for me. When I was experiencing my chronic foot pain, I had plantar fasciitis, and most of the providers I saw, and remember I was like 15, 18, 21 at the time. And they said, oh, well, this is something that happens in old people. So kind of leaving it there. And so that them saying that, I think, was them thinking out loud, which they probably should have, for lack of a better term, shut their mouths, because at that point I thought that my body was different than other people my age. I felt that there was something specifically wrong with me, and that because of that, I would not be capable of becoming pain-free. And because of that, I had, consistent permanent damage. And so that's kind of an example. And you'll often hear that with imaging, taking an image and saying, oh, you have a spine of an 80-year-old. And that's really interesting because in actual radiology, we have no way to know how old someone is past the age of maturity. We have no way of knowing that. So yeah, that's just one example of it. But times that it is more important, there are definitely times, like especially when dealing with the diagnoses that you often see, dealing with other things such as like the red flags that Phil was mentioning before. And sometimes it can explain our pain, and that's really, really valuable as well. But just kind of those labels slapped onto us isn't always helpful.
And I think something that's really interesting as we're kind of on this topic of radiology and imaging and looking at some of these pictures is that I think there's this idea out there that our bodies should look a certain way, that our spines should look a certain way, that you need to sit or stand or sleep in certain positions. And if you do not do these things, you are causing damage and degeneration and a host of other things, typically negative in nature, to your body. And the reality is that almost always that's not true. I'm not saying that there might not be a few instances where these things are probably important, but I think when we tend to look at some of these X-rays and people want to generate these intensive treatment plans and this long-term care solely off of a picture that's taken in a snapshot of time and then comparing it to this quote unquote perfect position, we know that doesn't exist. So in my mind, we are now beginning to create narratives to sell care, to get you to continue to come back to us. And I think that's where things begin to become dangerous, because a lot of these narratives that are out there, the reality is there's really nothing to support those things. Sure, if you want to stand up tall and straight and that makes you feel more confident and you deliver your message better and it makes you feel good, that's great. But I challenge any of you to stand up straight for 30 minutes in a row even. Let me know how that feels. It's probably not very good. You're probably going to want to return to slouching, and that is okay. But this is such an important topic because I think, again, not just in the chiropractic profession, but a lot of times I feel care is based solely off of what we would call biomechanical issues, or really looking at how your body's moving or how it's resting, and then determining the issues based off of that. Again, these things are complex. It cannot be that simple almost ever. So as we move on from that, I think this is such a good place to begin to talk about this instance where it is common for chiropractors to create fear and to create urgency and to make it seem like if you do not enter this treatment plan, there will be consequences down the road. And I think that's something that all four of us here would really like to dispel this narrative, because it's something that can be damaging in nature. For the patients that you guys have worked with that have come in and probably had some of these ideas in their head, how do you begin to explain to them that, okay, maybe these diagnoses that sound scary on paper, maybe they're not so scary, and we can work with you and we can work towards these goals that maybe you thought were now out of reach because of these labels that have been slapped on you?
So if you took a family portrait of everyone in the family and everyone's supposed to be smiling, but then maybe one of them is going through a bad day, maybe one lost their job, maybe one really is really, really happy and they won the lottery, everyone's still giving the same smile. So that I use the analogy a lot to tell a patient, like, you can give me an image of your x-ray, but I'll look at the impressions. If I see stuff that's like, yeah, I just, in my mind, I'm like, it's normal stuff, wear and tear. And I will tell them, like, okay, based off of what I'm seeing, we're still a green light, right? So if we're just going with alignment, trying to chase the certain position of your spine, like, we are missing the point of chiropractic. Yes, we traditionally want to go for alignments and we want to make sure things are looking in a certain way, in the classic way. But I would say a modern way of looking at chiropractic is, can your spine adapt to the activities that you're trying to do? Is your spine dynamic and capable enough to handle what it is you're trying to do? And you can be flexed, extended, side bendy. I apparently have military neck that I didn't know until I got an x-ray from the from a chiropractor. He's like, yeah, you don't have neck pain? I'm like, no. He said, well, your neck is straight as hell. I'm like, cool. I don't have neck pain though. And then Jenna, I think you have a little bit of scoliosis, right? So like everyone's got different configurations. That should not dictate that should not put you in the box. Just think about, zoom out. What are you trying to do? Let your provider know what's the goal. And they should feel like, okay, knowing where your start point is and where you want to be, just reverse engineer whether or not your spine looks a certain way or not. Like, that's important, but more important is what's the end goal of what you're trying to do? What's the functional goal here?
And I think even and it's hard, it's easier said than done, but I think going back to your original question of how do we know when there is something wrong? How do we know when the fear is kind of a tactic to get you coming back? We kind of deep down know how much care we need. And it's very hard because, of course, the provider's an authority figure and they're the professional. So you want to trust what they're saying, right? But if you take yourself back to the moment you sought out care, we know, like, if someone's experiencing chronic pain, and this is something that I was experiencing chronic pain, and I knew that somehow, some way I was going to be okay at the end of the day. But one of my providers said, maybe running just isn't for you. And I knew that they were wrong. Yes, it still hurt. Yes, it still kind of like stayed in my mind for a very long period of time, but I knew deep down that it was wrong. So if it feels deep down that you need a second opinion, then get a second opinion. Even if it's a different type of provider who does conservative care as well, that's completely a very normal thing to do as well. And going back to kind of understanding pain, just like how Phil was describing, pain being complex is not necessarily a bad thing. When you think about it and you're like, oh, well, if there's all these different contributing factors, then how am I ever going to overcome it? And so there are a lot of contributing factors, but for different people, there are pretty big contributors that we can find and we can address. So you can, like, especially if you're dealing with chronic pain, you can kind of think about pain as like you're starting a 100,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. There are all these different pieces and you're like, where the hell do we even start? And so I like to describe it as like, let's cover our fundamentals. Let's reduce your pain with the tools that we have. Let's make sure that you're in really good health and all these other things. And that's kind of filling out like the border of the jigsaw puzzle. You can start in any corner, you can start in any area. And as we start to uncover these things, we know what's helping us if we keep track of it, if we keep the data, if we keep a pain journal or keep communication about it, we can figure out, where should we put more pieces to the jigsaw puzzle? Is it in the area of sleep? Is it in the area of exercise? And as we start to place the pieces on the puzzle and see what fits where, we start to get a better view of what's going to work for us with our pain. And so slowly with time, with working in collaboration with your provider, you can find your route to feeling better and feeling more pain-free. And it becomes less like this, wow, where do I even start, to understanding the systems that are going to be working for you and ultimately leading to you not needing a provider at the end of the day.
And in order for you to do that, as providers, we have to emphasize, because we classically, a lot of times, this fear-based model of chiro, it's like, if you don't come in to get adjusted 3 times a week, you're screwed, or you're going to get cancer. But from what Jenna was explaining with this jigsaw puzzle, we can't have that mindset going in, because how else are they going to put that puzzle together? So we need to make sure we not only say what are the potential areas to improve on, of course, yes, but we have to tell patients what they're already good at. What are they doing well already? And then build off of that. Maybe they're sleeping well. Emphasize that. That's one thing that's actually going to help your pain. What if they eat really healthy? Whatever defining the healthy that is, tell them that's helping with their pain, even though they've been told, oh, it's because my spine is out of whack, that's why I'm still screwed. No, like, there's so many things that you're doing well, and that will help them, give them the tools and their mindset to helping them address their pain independently, and they know they're doing all the right things. Even though some days you'll have days where it's like, that doesn't seem like anything is changing, but being able to zoom out, look at all the micro wheels that are moving to help them move forward, huge. So our ability to take that complicated aspect of pain, zooming out and telling them, like, you're doing really well here, boom, 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 that's still progress,
Yeah, I love that. And I think something that listeners can start to watch out for when they are picking a chiropractor or they are picking somebody to be a part of their care team is, do they make me feel shameful or do they make me feel empowered and make me feel hopeful? If it is shame and shame only, and they are not helping you feel hope in any way, shape, or form, it's not going to get you to your goals. As humans, we need both positive and negative reinforcement. We don't do well when we just are shamed and shamed and shamed. And remember, we live in a for-profit healthcare system. You have the choice to pick your doctors, especially in the chiro world. It's okay to not go back to your chiropractor. It's okay to listen to your gut and really decide for yourself what is going to be the best for me. And so talking about other providers that can be a part of our care team, I know you guys both work with an MD on your team as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like and why can that be helpful?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that we found him is of course, providers need to be working with providers who have similar values. And so it was kind of a ask and you shall receive situation. We were out looking for providers to connect with, and that landed us the spot and sharing space with him. And so we've been really, really lucky to have this experience of being able to even collaborate on cases that where, we're not necessarily seeing the person together, but helping each other with that care. But being able to bounce ideas off of other providers who have different degrees than you and different scopes of practice than you is so, so, so important. I think when chiropractors stay in kind of our own echo chambers, it can be even a little bit dangerous because we have seen it before. Chiropractors think that they can help anything and everything. So having other providers to ask questions to and to really even expose yourself to the gaps in your knowledge and the gaps that you should have, because we all shouldn't have every single area of specialty. So that has been really, really helpful and awesome. And yeah, anything to add, Phil?
We were just super lucky to bump into this guy. And the moment I walked in his office, it was a very calm vibe. He was playing some like Afro beats in the back. And I came out with, he's so chill and he was so open-minded to our profession. He knows a lot of PTs, he knows a lot of chiros, and he's very open-minded. He's an MD. So we have, I guess I came in a little bit of like, I don't know if he's going to love me or hate me or not, but there's good, bad, and ugly in every profession. And this guy, luckily, he's the most open-minded. He really cares for his patients. You can tell from just like he takes his time listening to his patients. He really helps them understand their pain. And he's very open to different options. And he's like, chiropractic works for the right context, for the right patient. And of course, he's not anti-medication. He's going to prescribe, but he'll tell us all the time and he'll tell his patients, he's like, I can give you medication to block the pain, but if you don't work on your habits, if you don't work on if your nutrition is crap and you're not sleeping enough, like you're kind of just wasting your time and your money. So you have to work on those too. And right off the bat, like I knew that was different, and that was a really good opportunity for us to kind of collaborate in that space because we really align with our values and how we treat handle patient care.
I think that's something that, as a profession, as chiropractors, if we're not at the top of the list, we're near it as far as professionals, healthcare professionals who are probably mistrusted on average by people in the public. So I'd say the people that love us probably absolutely love us, but also say there's probably a large number of people who want nothing to do with us because they feel like the second they walk in our door, they will be signed up for lifelong care, or that we're, going to try and treat things outside of our scope. So to me, like when you guys have an example here where you've been able to connect with other healthcare professionals as well, because a lot of times we get flack from them, it's really encouraging to see that there is collaboration within healthcare as a whole, and that we are gaining the trust of more people. So to me, for everyone who's listening to this really is to help develop awareness that there are chiropractors who very much have your best interests at heart, are not there to make you a lifelong patient, are there to support you and help you towards your goals. and are there to do so in a way where we're utilizing all of the current information available to us. And to us, this is really the role that we're trying to fill in, is this area of musculoskeletal health. And then for those of you who are unaware what that means, that's, it's the muscle strains, it's the sore back, it's the shoulder pain that wasn't traumatic in nature. There are chiropractors that might be some of the best providers that you could possibly see for these issues, given that they're a little bit more up to date in their treatment approaches. And to me, the collaboration, again, between healthcare professionals demonstrates that we are moving in the right direction. So for those of you who have maybe had a negative experience in the past and are fall into that camp of, well, chiropractic's not for me, it's a scam, I'm never going back there again, I don't blame you for that. I completely understand why you might feel that. And at some point in the future, maybe it would be in your best interest to try and explore it again, because there are people that are sincere and are in positions to help you in a way similar to what Phil and Jenna are doing, where they're providing you support and care on a level that's so much greater than you may have received in any healthcare setting, that these are some of the things that we are capable of doing. So I wanted to kind of wrap things up today with one more thing, because I know you guys not only work in the realm of pain, but also work in the realm of performance, with lifters and runners specifically a lot of the time. And I think this is probably also an idea that tends to be a little bit foreign, in that, okay, there are chiropractors that maybe help you get out of pain, but then there are also chiropractors slash coaches who can progress you even beyond that and work through this entire spectrum of care, from maybe more a traditional rehab setting over to more of a performance setting. Talk about how your backgrounds and your skill sets allow you to do both, and how that ultimately benefits the people that you're working with.
So I would say, I'll give an example. I had a patient who had recently strained his groin playing golf. And it was a lot of unsuccessful interventions with MDs, surgeons. They were at some point saying it might be his liver, but it's not. Tried a round of physical therapy, and he was just so freaking confused. He thought he was just dying. And after, it was crazy, because he was like, after we had our first appointment, he's like, "Man, you really listened to my story." And I already knew. I wasn't sure, because he was very down the dumps and everything. But after a few sessions, he said after the first session we knew, he felt so positive and reassured about his condition that he is playing golf now. So he has no issues playing. A little bit of pain here and there. So here's to answer your question. We are really good at transitioning for a patient from getting them out of pain. And we're not golf experts, but we want to make sure if they're going to return to golf, that they have the capability of being able to swing enough times and being able to get in themselves in those specific positions. So that gap between pain to just a general strength and endurance performance to get them to play golf hard, or name your XYZ sport harder, is what we're really good at. So just, could be very general in terms of strength and conditioning, making sure they have enough strength in their, name an exercise here. Like the program that I'm having him on is general, but enough to get him to feel that he can have the strength and capacity to do what he needs to do. I don't know if that answers your question, but no. I wouldn't call it, we're not trying to take the position of a performance coach or a golf specialist because he wants to play golf, but that little bridge, because he was scared that if he was to go play golf, if he was to play golf on his own, he's scared of having a flare up. And that was his main concern. So to bridge that and have him still play a little bit here and there while still having me in the corner, that transition is huge. And that's what we're really trying to make sure people can do. Once we feel like we're pretty much at our ends, he can just go off and do his own thing.
And that's kind of exactly what I do with runners as well. So we will use, like I think we had mentioned, if we hadn't, we will use their end goals as pieces of their rehab so that we can kind of make that a seamless transition, right? And so with runners, the biggest thing that runners are not doing to overcome their running related pain is literally running and having a running prescription. And so I'm working with a runner right now who's dealing with plantar fasciitis, and it was like 10 weeks out and he had a 10 miler on the schedule he had signed up for. And he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to get there because he was so used to people asking him to be pain-free before he could start running. Now, running didn't flare up his symptoms. Of course, if he went out and ran 20 miles after running, 10 miles each week, that would flare up his symptoms. But running was fine. So we used running as a way to expose him to longer distances and to overcome that pain. So finding someone who does have that kind of eye for the sport or the performance that you want as your end goal can make that transition really seamless. And so I had worked with people we had ruled out suspected stress fractures with running, and it ended up being tendonitis. And we got her to a marathon, I think it was 8 weeks later. And so I kind of took over her whole program to get her there, of course, peak her there, deload her into the race and have a really good race. So yeah, there's very many ways to go about it, but bridging the gap is definitely something that you need if sport or any activity is your end goal.
Yeah, I love that. And to listeners, if you're not into running or golf and you don't have a specific sport and your goal is just to be able to be active, maybe play with your kids, it's the same idea. It's the same process. And I think one big piece of this as well is that zero pain may not be our end goal, but learning to deal with our own pain and be confident in ourselves to be able to manage that pain and still do all the things that we want to do, that might be a better goal and a more realistic goal for you. Because humans are going to be in pain at some point in their life. That's just part of being human. And if we can learn to make that pain more of an annoyance and not debilitating ever, that's a really, really good goal that I think every chiropractor should be helping their patients achieve. And that can be for any insert goal. It doesn't have to be running a marathon or playing a specific sport.
And this is where it's so important to have people in your corner that understand the importance of these types of things related to life, related to sports, related to activities that you like to do. Because to really get to these points, whether it's getting back to golf or running that marathon or playing with your kids, as Taylor just mentioned, it takes more than a therapy that's only being applied to you. And it takes someone that is going to understand how to work across this spectrum of, maybe you're in pain and more of a rehab phase, and then there's a performance end on the other side, and we need to traverse this gap, bridge the gap, as Jenna said. There are not a lot of people, in my opinion, who understand how to traverse that entire spectrum. I think there's a lot of people that are very good in performance. I think there are a lot of people that are really good in the early stages of injury or post-op or things of that nature. But the people that can work across any aspect of that spectrum, to me, are some of the people that will provide the most value for you, because they can get you in a position where, okay, you're in pain. Let's get you out of pain. Let's calm things down. Let's get you in a place where you feel comfortable beginning to move. As everyone here mentioned, that might not be pain-free, but we're going to give you the confidence that you can operate through some of this space with some discomfort in a manner that's safe. And that's probably very contradictory to a lot of things that you've heard. You need to rest, you need to relax, you need to wait until there's no pain there. But guess what's happening during that time? You're deconditioning, you're losing strength. Now, as you go to reintegrate back into these things, your body is not as physically prepared as it needs to be. So when you have someone that can start you as early as you possibly can into this idea of building strength, building general preparedness for whatever task it is you're looking to do, this is where we see some of the best recoveries and best outcomes for people that have goals like that. So we're running out of time here. I know there's probably more things that we want to talk about, but is there any last thoughts that either of you, Phil or Jenna, would like to share with the audience today?
I think we pretty much covered it. I think the biggest thing that you had mentioned is kind of making sure that we are bridging that gap and not just looking for pain-free, but looking for a way to, like you mentioned, work across all of these different spectrums and make sure that we aren't taking you out of sport without necessity. Like, so many runners will go to a provider and be told to stop running. And runners start deconditioning as soon as 10 days of no running. And that's not mentioned to scare you, but if we allow you to decondition while we're trying to overcome pain. Now we have to do both. We have to recondition you and we have to overcome your pain. So there are very few diagnoses where we actually need to take you out of running. And that's just one example. So making sure that you're not stopping sport without necessity. And also, I mean, that doesn't mean go and do 100% of your sport. Especially if you're feeling pain, we have to find a happy medium, but starting somewhere is kind of going to be the biggest thing for us.
If I could summarize it, if for listeners, your best provider is one that's going to help you understand your pain and what that pain means to you in your activity. Then they will help you prepare for said activity. You need to prepare, not just me adjust your back. And then finally, the mindset going into this plan is from a positive mindset, meaning that we're not going to make you feel like you're broken and weak and fragile and that you need me to fix you. We will give you the tools to get you to feel like you can do it on your own. And we're just on the side cheering you on.
That sounds awesome. I'm going to work with you guys next time I get hurt because you guys are awesome.
Same here, bet.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Who's going to get hurt first, huh? Well, let's see what happens. I'm going to go 1 rep max right now, cold. It's going to happen.
I'm going to run a marathon right now.
Okay, you win. I'm not doing that. All right, Phil, Jenna, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And we're going to drop all their information in the descriptions. If you guys want to get a hold of them, you can reach out to them through those links. And until next time, we will see you all then.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much.